Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this addendum episode of the Greatest Profession podcast. This is meant to be a reflections episode, or otherwise known as a esoteric meanderings episode, on the most recent podcast episode featuring Lindsay Knott, No Extra Fingers Left. Um, I wanted to kind of start adding in these extra little bits. I feel like that there's so many themes and issues that come up in these episodes that it would be nice to have this kind of sort of extra space to reflect on some of that, and then provide maybe a little bit of like a that's interesting. What an interesting insight. That's the hope, at least. And then I think that there's a lot of these things. I mean, at the end of the day, listening to other people's stories is one thing, but then how we can take those lessons and use them to potentially change our own lives, I think is something else. So that's the goal of these. Um, I'm recording this on Father's Day, my first Father's Day, which is bizarre. Little fella's 2 months old at this point. In the spirit of it, I'm wearing a very dad shirt. I have a little dad mug that I'm drinking my coffee out of. If you are watching the video on YouTube, which by the way, I'm putting these episodes up on YouTube, so that's another place to look for the podcast. But if you're looking on YouTube, you can see the shirt in all its glory. If you're not, I'll go ahead and describe it to you. There are seashells. First off, it's a pale green. There are like conical type seashells. It's LL Bean and it's a button up. I don't know how much more I need to tell you, but I think that you get it. It's 100% made for dads by dads to spot other dads in the wild and say, "Hey, how's your lawnmower?" So I wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit. Or when I was listening to this episode and going back through and editing everything, there's a bunch of themes that came up, and honestly, I could talk about or touch on a lot of them. The approach to education and how we sort of exist within internships and residencies and all of that. Reasons for the ways that we treat people. Freedom of choice, philosophy around student loans, developing friendships as an adult. A bunch of things. But there was one in particular that sort of stood out that I kind of latched onto, and that was timelines and the philosophy of feeling behind, and feeling trapped. So, when we were talking, and I think that this is really common amongst many of us, especially, I mean, if we've gone through all of the undergrad and then all of the vet school stuff and then early career things, be it an internship residency or just kind of first jobs, by the time we hit what a normal life, quote unquote, was or, is supposed to be, we're older. And so, it's really easy to kind of look around at those who were our peers and feel incredibly behind. So, you might be 30 or in my case 30, almost 38, and looking around and all these people who you went to high school with or college or whatever, and they're having kids and raising a family. You might feel behind in your career because you're just starting out. It's like a new associate, and then you look over and it's like, I mean, I have friends who are about to retire or have retired. That's crazy. And I feel like I'm like still, just getting started. We're still kind of climbing the ladder, in a way. And then, I would also say kind of that the balance of outside of work stuff too, right? And you can kind of feel behind there. It's like, oh gosh, these people travel all the time, or they're involved in these sports leagues, or softball or something that I probably should be looking forward to. Little dad wear softball. Do I get to wear jean shorts for softball? I wonder. If so, you got to sign me up immediately. uh, but it's like all the outside of work and profession stuff as well. We just feel incredibly behind. And so I think that there's a couple of things on this. Um, it does feel dismissive to say like, oh, don't compare yourselves to others, or we're comparing ourselves to societal norms and all of that. And I think that that's true. I mean, of course, there's reason why it's a hackneyed sort of phraseology, but also I think that there's kind of more to it than that. And I also kind of feel behind in a lot of ways, right? I started even just amongst my peers. I started vet school at 28. I'm almost 38 now. I just had my first kid, so that's later. Definitely. I live in a neighborhood surrounded by college students, like surrounded by them. And it's like, yeah, sure. I guess the difference is that like I own the home and they're renting, but it's like we're right next to each other. So it's like, it's not like I like moved in to a neighborhood with, lawns that are very well manicured and people just going like, "Hello, good morning, Jed. Nice to see your poodle. Seems perky today." Or whatever happens in those neighborhoods. I have no idea. I don't live there. Um, but I also did a ton of stuff beforehand. So, when I did improv for 7-8 years or whatever professionally, and a lot more after that. I was a special education aide in an elementary school. I did bookkeeping stuff for my uncle. I helped him kind of with his business, and I learned a ton about that. I lived in a bunch of different cities. I traveled a lot. Um, I rode on trains. I went to ski jump competitions. I hiked. I mean, I went through a master's program. I wrote a rock opera, which I mean, you can't see it here, but it sits. The posters for the rock opera sits right above my computer at home to kind of remind me of that. But it's like I did all of those things instead of climbing some corporate ladder or advancing a family or something like that. And that kind of brings me to this thought that the definition of these timelines I just feel like is incomplete. We're not looking at everything else. We're not looking at things that exist outside of the timeline. We're just looking at the common things. um and there's a lyric, there's a Paul Simon lyric from the Rhythm of the Saints album, and he says, "Hard times, I'm used to them. The speeding planet burns. I'm used to it. My life is so common that it disappears." And I mean that came out in '91. I was 6. Many of you were not born yet, but that lyric has stuck with me for my whole life. My life is so common that it disappears. And, maybe when we're looking at all these other things and we're sort of comparing ourselves to this life that other people are living, we're comparing ourselves to the common bits. We're, it's like we're judging being behind, but what we're judging it against is banality. It's just common. If everyone had this life, then your life would not be unique. Your life would be so common that it disappears. And so perhaps there's a virtue in having an uncommon life. So you're not behind necessarily, you're just not participating in the banality. And that's not to that sounds like I'm sort of playing down how that piece of it is important. I mean, there's a reason why, I mean, there's an allure to it for sure. There's a reason why a lot of us do it. And I'm not saying that there's not value in it, but what I am saying is that it's not that that's where the only value lies. There's value in however it is that you want to live your life, as long as you're living in accordance to, your values or what it is that you want from life. So, the other piece of it is then that how are you defining life? Like, is that it? Is that, I love lawns. I love mowing lawns. Like when I'm in the backyard and the grass is just flying everywhere, that is where I feel the essence of life. Maybe, maybe so. Um, and that's, great, whatever. Like none of us can, say that any one version of this life has any more merit or value than any other version of this life. Um, I guess there's just things to consider. Like, is life about maybe being curious about the world around us, or is it about developing relationships, or is it about raising a family and having progeny and teaching lessons of how to survive in this world? Is it about belonging? Is it about seeing everything and experiencing whatever the world has to offer, from Egypt to Argentina and back? And I think that that answer is going to be different for everyone. So I think that it's just something, it's worth sort of considering when we're thinking about these timelines. Like, what do you want from it? And you know a thought is, why does it matter, right? Like, okay, so we feel behind. Okay. I mean, everyone is going to be a little bit dissatisfied about something at all times. So what's the big deal? But what I maybe this is just a hypothesis, but I wonder if people, when they're feeling behind, are then less likely to take risks. And maybe another way of looking at that is, if you feel behind already, it's really hard for you to become unstuck. Because like a lot of times, it's like we're going down this route, and let's say that we get a job, and after our advanced career, and we spent all this time doing this, and you're a couple years in, you're like, man, I don't want to do this anymore, but also I don't want to start over. I'm already so behind. And so then you stay in that job, or you stay in that part of the United States or world or whatever, and that's us becoming stuck and fixed in a point, instead of taking the risks or the steps to become unstuck and to live a life that maybe is in more accordance to what you actually want from it. It's a long way of saying that by comparing yourself to the timelines of other people, you are going to force yourself into a life that you don't necessarily want to be living. And you're so afraid to step out of this path for fear of starting over, because you don't want to become further behind. And I think that we can all sort of, the furthest extent of that is that this thing that you're so maybe not satisfied with, you become stuck in, and then that's what you do forever, and then that becomes your life. Why? Because you felt like you didn't have the house that your old college roommate had. I I don't know. I mean, I think that, yeah, sure, if that's the thing, it's just, if that's the thing that's the most important to you, then great, then go down that route. But if it's not, then don't. And I think that we just get so overwhelmed by, competing with the Joneses or whatever, keeping up with the Joneses. We get trapped in that sometimes. And as much as we lament sitting in the groove, it is a lot easier than trying to jump up and move along the rocky surface above. Sometimes I feel like we are comparing ourselves against other dots along an x-axis. She's like, "Gosh, that one's so much further than I am. I'm over here at -1, and then that one's over there at like the year 312. How can I ever get there?" And we're so focused on going down the x-axis that we forget that there's a y-axis too. And maybe we're meant to soar along the y-axis. So I'm just saying that there's more to it. It- and the fact is, yeah, you're behind. I mean, in those things, you are behind. You don't, you spend a lot of time in school not making money and not putting money away into a 401k and not saving for a down payment and eschewing dating, because you know what? You have to focus on your learning. You don't have time for all of that kind of stuff. And so now you're re entering this world, as it were. And the fact is, yeah, you are behind. You are going to be older than some of the parents when you drop your kid off at daycare. I mean, yes, yes. But also, you are ahead in a lot of ways. I mean, if you look at life as something where you want to learn more about everything going on, you're way ahead. You know more about anatomy and physiology, and how your own body works, because you've studied the bodies of many different species, right? And that's something, I mean, when I was when I wrote the rock opera, and this was just before I went into vet school, I was already taking, like, already taken my prereqs and all that stuff. There's a line. So here's a little. The rock opera is basically, it's effectively a parody on Captain Planet, if you didn't know what Captain Planet was. And that's it. So it's like this eco-friendly superhero, and he drinks some radioactive juice, and that gives him superpowers, but his superpowers are like recycling and reusing, and so so Ah. But there's a line in there where it's like he's drinking the radioactive juice. It goes into his bloodstream through renal capillaries, powers, super eco-friendly powers. So I had no idea what the physiology was. Apparently, in my mind, you drank it and it went through the kidneys and then into the body where it could be uptaken to give you super eco-friendly powers. I didn't know. And like that's now I have the superhero power at this point where I actually know how my body works and that is a very silly thing. Every time I listen to it, it like comes on occasion on random and like my songs on my phone. I'm like, yeah, moron. I can't believe it. I want to like re-record it. But anyway, so it's like I know now so much more about how my own body works because I went through all of this. And that gives me insight into how the world works. So if learning is if you think that, hey, life is actually more about understanding the things around you, then you're way ahead. Is the long lesson on that. You've also developed sort of very deep friendships because you went through this hell together, and that's something that again not a lot of people have. You might have your work friends or your people from high school or college or people that you met down at the bar or whatever, and it's a lot of acquaintances or light level friends. This is foxhole friends. You have those deep relationships that other people don't. um Professional development, sure, like, yeah, you're not up the ladder, but you are in a very narrow line of individuals um who have this advanced career development. There's not a lot of, you can't just turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to be a medical professional today. And truly in all of this, you've learned a lot of lessons about yourself because over and over and over again, you've had to decide, is this something that I truly want? And in all of those ways, you're also ahead. So yeah, you're behind. You are, but also you're ahead. And at the end of the day, all this stuff, it either evens out or it only matters if you are ahead on the timeline that you actually want to be on. So the question really is, are you behind on the things in life that you really want out of life? And if you're behind on those things, get moving. But if you're behind on the things that you think matter because that's what we always assumed would matter, I don't know, maybe let some of that go. So, with this, yeah, esoteric meanderings with Asciutto, uh, you know, that's what this is in some way. But I also think that I want to challenge you to maybe reconsider how you're feeling about where you are overall. And to do that, ask yourself a couple of questions. And the first one is, what are you wanting out of life? Like this is your one time on Earth, this little infinitesimal little point along the chronology of the universe. What do you want from it? You're not going to be able to have everything. You're not. So what of all of those things do you want? Do you want to satisfy curiosity? Do you want to be curious about little things like, wow, that's a seed pod, and you like go in deep and like, look at there's 84 of them, or whatever. Is that where you want to get your joy and live your life? Is it about you know establishing deeper friendships or raising a family and all of those things? I mean, figure out what it is that you are actually wanting from this life, and then focus on those things and understand, what, yeah, sure, some of these other things you're just not ever going to have. Like I've had to let go a lot of or on a lot of, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call them dreams, but expectations from myself or things that I might wanted to have learned at this point. And I'm like, you know what? It's just not in store for this life. I have so many other things that I want to do. Like, me being a graphic designer is just not in the cards. It's just not on the list of things that I want to put my efforts towards. So that's one. What do you truly want? And then two, take stock of what you have accomplished. What have you done that fits within what you want? And then, yeah, figure out where, what's left. Are you behind on some things? Are you ahead on some things? Are you exactly where you want to be? And maybe just readjust a little bit. And at the end of the day, no matter where you are in that timeline, it kind of doesn't matter. Like, your life is your life. You're here in this point now. Your body functions in this way at this moment, whereas one day it may not. Your brain functions in this way at this moment, whereas one day it may not. What do you want? Where are you now? And at the end of the day, I don't know, just be grateful about what it is that you do have, and try to put effort in the things that are outstanding, that are left. And then, a big piece of that is going to be taking the risks. I just don't want you to feel like you're behind, therefore you can't take risks and for fear of starting over again. The risks are how you get to the good stuff. So that's it for today. I just wanted to, again, add this little bit of a short reflection, give you guys something to kind of think about. Um, and truly, think about those couple of things, and come back to it, revisit it. I someone told me once that they sat down every couple of months with their partner and a glass of wine and figured out, hey, what are my values? What am I striving for? What do I truly want? And they just wrote them down every 3 months. And then the ones that stuck, those are the ones that's your thread. That's the thread that you're going to follow. And the ones that kind of come and go, it's like, well, you know what? Maybe I don't put as much effort into that. So, what do you want out of life? Take stock of what you have accomplished and what fits within what you want out of life. And then, what do you want that maybe you're still behind on? That's it. That's your call to action. All right? I did it. So, um, thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit. As I sort of mentioned quickly at the top of the podcast, these are now going to be put up on YouTube. So everywhere that you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And honestly, if you can't find it, because the greatest profession, if you type that into Spotify or whatever, you may end up with the Greatest Showman. And sure, sing along with some Hugh Jackman. That's fine. Go for that. You can also go to thegreatestprofession.com or tgppod.com, and all of the links are on there as well. So thanks for coming along with me, and get out there and enjoy your life. All right.